Listen, if you have concerns about your heart and your health, you want to listen to this conversation because Dr. Jaitly here, he invented this thing called Smart Heart. It's a device that we're going to talk about. And really, as people, as we get older, we get concerned about things like this. So I was very curious. Dr. Jaitly, welcome to this program for the second time. When you had your book published last year, we had you here on your human element, which was a fantastic conversation. So we're going to get into some of the reasons why or how, what led to invention of this. So anyway, let me just welcome you first. And all about Dr. Jaitly is going to be in the show notes. Welcome again.
Thank you, Raju, for having me again on your podcast. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to share some of my beliefs, some of my experiences on your podcast with the esteemed audiences you have had.
Well, awesome. So a lot of my audience is, typically entrepreneurs or corporate folks that are looking to launch their businesses, et cetera. And some of them are even in the healthcare life sciences space. I know you're a cardiologist, practiced for 45 years. What exactly led you to start creating this now? And tell us about the device. What is it exactly?
An excellent question, because this has been a passion, Raju, for about 40 plus years in my practice, where I found that the biggest challenge for a cardiologist, for a heart doctor, is obviously a sudden cardiac death episode that occurs in a family. There's nothing greater than a loss of a patient in a practice, other than your personal loss that may happen in everybody's life. I guess we have had that. So I personally feel when those sudden cardiac death episodes occurred without any rhyme or reason, or without any announcement, or without any premonitory symptoms, if you will, those were the ones which I think has been the greatest challenge for not just me as a cardiologist, but the entire cardiology community. Just to let your audiences be aware that 20% of the cardiac deaths that are occurring worldwide, they're still occurring because there was no rhyme or reason, unfortunately. Especially so, more so in the younger youths, in the younger athletes, and in the younger population. And so there has been an inquisitiveness all along. Now, anecdotally, there have been reports where people have talked about maybe it's genetics, maybe it was smoking, maybe it was lack of exercise, maybe it was vigorous exercise, super vigorous exercise that the individual performed, et cetera, et cetera. Or it could be uncontrolled hypertension, diabetes, and all these risk factors which trigger one to have these cardiac conditions. But a small piece in the puzzle which has always been struck with me in the past 45 years, to answer your question, why did I think of this, was an HRV, as I call it, and that's the heart rate variability. Now, you have an heart rate variability where one actually responds to flight, fright, and a freeze situation, if you will.
Sure.
And so do I. So everybody has that built-in HRV by the Almighty that has been given to us. The lesser the heart rate variability, for instance, if that occurs, that means one does not have that reactionary sort of a moment that somebody can actually save oneself from. And those are the HRV components which my device has really come up with. So I'm very pleased to announce that, as a matter of fact, and share with you. Of course, you're perhaps already aware that now the US patent is underway. We are already approaching our milestones with the trademark and therefore with the FDA clearance down the line. So hopefully we should achieve all of that by the end of the year. But I personally felt, because in the past 40 some years, I felt that this was the requirement perhaps to, use as a tool.
I'm still trying to get to, okay, so did you lose a patient? Was there something that happened that led you to say, we need something like this? Because, on the market today, as you know, Dr. Jaitly, we have wearables.
You can call me Sharad.
I know. I just want to make sure that the audience knows that, you're a respected friend of mine, but well respected in the community. And I just want to honor you. So along the years, 45 years, you must have had lots of cases and challenges where it was like, I wish you could save this patient, et cetera. But I was coming to the fact that today on the market, there is Whoop, WHOOP, a brand it's an IoT wearable, right? There is all those other Fitbits and other, without naming brands. There are HRV monitors, there are variability monitors, and Whoop does a good job of that. But how is that different than what you're about to launch in the market?
Right. So that's exactly where my device stands out, because it's a very unique protocol which actually allows the person to have himself or herself measure at a certain period of time during the day and several times during the day and make it a consistent reading, which will be analyzed computer graphically and be sent to the physician. Right now, like you said, Fitbit, iWatches and all these things, and many devices have the HRV, but do not have the capability of sending it over to the physician. But ultimately,
Oh,
what good is if the data is actually sitting with the person? He or she would not make any sense out of it. So the whole idea is wanting to see the data actually goes to the physician, whether it be a primary care or a
yeah.
cardiologist. Therefore,
Is it a
the
wearable?
doctor
Is it a
patient are
wearable?
connected.
Is it on the wrist or where is it worn?
I'll define you the device. Actually, I can show you the device right here. It's sitting next to me. It is about the size. This is our first generation device that has come, and it currently has a green light on it. Obviously, it's connected to my USB port via the laptop here, for instance. Now,
Okay,
the person will actually end up putting the thumb here or the finger on the top.
I
And
see.
as a result, now currently I'm recording my pulse, which is spectrographically actually being sent from my pulse and be translated into a near electrocardiographic mechanism so that actually an EKG manifestation, if you will, is being recorded
Oh, I
graphically
see.
on the
So for
screen.
those of you
So,
listening and not able to see what Dr. Jaitly is showing on screen, you may want to look it on YouTube, the same episode here. But go on, sorry.
correct. Right. So essentially, it's a device which is electrospectral cardiographically, if you will, with all the components. There are microcomputers within it. There is a pulse sensor within it, and obviously, it is changing. So this is a medical protocol we have devised, and that is, I
Right.
think, unique right now in the setting of so many HRV devices that are already existing. So the whole idea is wanting to see if you can actually have the physician interface with the patient's data together. So say the patient is given out this device and he or she, this is how I envision, because obviously it's not there yet. But once the device is actually given out to the patient, say from a primary care physician or from a GP or from a cardiologist's office, he or she will take this, bring the device into their own life's settings. So they can record right at the, say, during a lunch hour or after the dinner time. And they're required to do about like 30 readings over 30 days, which is
I
not a
see.
big deal. It's not too much to ask for. And this way I get some median or some averaging of HRV. Now, obviously, the audience would be interested in knowing what is normal HRV, what is abnormal HRV. But we have a means of really sort of categorizing that so that the physician actually reads it. It does not mean that the HRV is normal, you get a clean bill of health, or
Right.
vice versa. If the HRV is abnormal, you have to
Wait,
jump out and go and see a cardiologist right
wait,
away.
that's
No,
confusing.
but
So what is the device? First of all, whenever it comes out, it's going to be given to the cardiologist, the office of the cardiologist, and then they will be the one that would bring the patient in, or is it like, do you have to have a
right,
heart
right.
condition to be
Well,
able to put this, or?
Well, that'll be the ideal setting, but I'm trying to see if it can be expanded even to the general practitioners. So the
Well, because
general
I have
GPs
lost
can.
friends in their 40s who were running, and they are in incredible, health, and then they
Right,
dropped dead when they came back to their, home or hotel, and they're like, oh, and then the person died. My
right.
father-in-law
So
died, in the morning. He was doing his, usual
yeah,
practice after breakfast, and then just dropped
right.
dead.
That's truly a nightmare for a cardiologist. Like, yeah, you have had patients. Everybody has had patients over 40 years. I've had, scores of patients where they've had, or I've heard about from my colleagues that they have had total normal cardiac cath, and 6 months later, unfortunately, they went
But
out.
but what's confusing to me is like if I don't have any condition, I have no history, I'm a runner or I'm a very very healthy person, and then I drop dead. How would this device really prevent me? Should everybody should have this device regardless of your health condition? It seems to me.
Right. So that's the point because we want to go ahead right now to actually prevent and actually offer that screening tool to the physician. Now, say if I was to have this device and have my readings checked, and my readings are, say, abnormal. Okay. Now, which means now if you are my physician, you would say, Sharad, I would like to see you more closely over the next year. So this way we can pursue with your
Sure.
further testing, your lifestyle modifications, your habits, whether you're a smoker, or drinker, what have you, you're a
Yeah.
couch potato, you're not exercising much, and what have you. So all of
Yeah.
those things you will have a little closer eye. It's not that something is going to happen right away because my test was abnormal, but you will have a better idea, a better interest in actually following me much closely. So this is, as I said, it's a small piece in the puzzle, but certainly helps the cardiologist, gives an additional tool in the toolbox to try and see if we can actually help these patients with their outcomes. That's the whole idea. And like I said, it's 20% of the people are actually dying. You're right. Every one of us have heard, oh my God, I met Uncle Sam just last summer at a gathering. What happened to him? Or last Thanksgiving, Auntie Jane was there and something happened there. So there are people who can always relate that and say, look, I've had a family member who passed away so suddenly, like you just elaborated earlier. So you and I, we all have met these instances in our lifetime, once in a while at least.
This is important even for people who are healthy.
Yeah.
Hopefully this device will be there by then and they, okay, well, I should be monitored. I mean, does that not cause fear unnecessarily because you're otherwise healthy and you don't have any symptoms? Why would you go to a cardiologist?
Let's put it this way, because obviously I'd rather know than not know what's going on with me. So there are people who have, like I'm saying, I don't think it'll be extended out to the entire general population.
Okay.
That's why I precisely say it's the high risk groups. You have a family history, somebody who, like a cousin who passed away, God forbid, say 6 months ago, or something of that kind of a nature, or a young person, an athlete in the family, like a footballer, soccer, somebody who had an episode, or a collapse episode, or syncope episode. I think those are the places which will be a red flag for the cardiologist or for the general practitioner to really send the patient over for this type of testing. When they are asymptomatic, you're right. But the symptomatic ones automatically will be filtered and going to the physicians anyway.
So my next question comes from the fact that if it's not a wearable, it's not like all the other wearables out there, but where they monitor your heart rate and among other things.
Right.
What is different about this product that today's world-class or other facilities cardiologists don't have that this will fill that need?
All right. What I envision is, I think this could be an additional tool to actually help patients be guided for further testing, which could be straight, either a cardiac MRI, a cardiac PET. I don't want to confuse with the terminology here, but a lot of the times what happens is a patient shows up at a cardiologist's office. He or she gets an EKG, a stress test, and an echo, and the whole deal.
Yes.
So I'm trying to see if this test actually helps, and this helps the cardiologist understand one way or the other that perhaps we do not need so many testings. Idea is to just quickly jump into this algorithm and follow, and this way idea is to follow this map and quickly arrive at a diagnosis or rule out a diagnosis. I think like genetic studies, for instance, they could be undertaken. You could have lipid studies with genetic components could be studied. There are a lot of genetic cardiac diseases that are, people are born with, unfortunately, long QD syndrome and short QD syndrome and WPW syndromes and so many other, areas where electrocardiographic abnormalities sometimes are very subtle and they may not be discernible to the physician right away. But an HRV will certainly add a component, an additional component. Again, it does not mean that if it's normal, like I said, I always say that. So the way I envision is, well, first of all, I would like to have this be miniaturized. I want this to be almost the size of your car key pod, if you will. 2, it will not be a USB port. I would rather have it with a battery where battery operates. It'll have 5 to 7 years of battery, life within it. So it's easier for the patient. 3, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if it would have 2 or 3 files that it can contain individually. For instance, say if Mr. Smith gets it, Mrs. Smith can also use it in the family as well, or even a child or a niece or a nephew can use it. So up to 3 people within the family be able to use it, and all the data will be confidentially put into separate files and be transmitted to the physician.
Got it.
And fourthly, what I envision this is, obviously, we'd like to see a mass production eventually. But the fact is that we'd like to see how the investors can come in and look at it and say, hey, look, maybe perhaps we can actually reduce the costs so that the volumes can be available even to, developing countries, specifically so because my heart goes out to India and many other countries where one can utilize it even for a fraction of a cost. So the whole idea is wanting to see how best we can extend out this human element, if you will, or this component of my practice, which I personally feel, I think, gathers more momentum as we move forward. And obviously, there are hurdles that we have to cross bureaucratically, and obviously for reasons untold, but at the same time, like an FDA clearance and getting the trademark associations, etc.,
So
etc.
when do you
So those
expect this
things
to
are in the
be?
way, and we are working on those milestones.
So yeah, best. So next, so that leads to the question about when do you see this? Maybe not mass market, but even as a test market, when is it likely to be in the hands of at least some cardiology centers or hospitals?
Truly, I wanted it 40 years ago, but but obviously it's
Well,
not
okay,
ready yet. But the fact is that it's going to be, I think, one time or the other. I think depends upon how good the clearance can be. I would envision between 6 months a year. I think
okay,
the device should conform to my envision guidelines that I enumerated earlier.
okay. So I guess we're gonna probably just end with this one here. You're the author of Human Element, HU being capital as part of the periodic table. I love the cover of that book.
Right
Oh, he's
here.
holding up the book right now. So Human Element, guys, get that book because it'll give you perspective on Dr. Jaitly's incredible life and what he believes is the whole landscape of the medical profession and particularly cardiology has been and where it could be and it's not clearly.
And my Hindi translation
And your translation in Hindi in India. Okay.
as well.
So how are these two linked? So that new invention that you're just looking at and coming out with hopefully soon and this human element.
I think there's a commonality here because the flow of thought was the following, and perhaps Raju, you know me very well for the past 45 years, 50 years, perhaps now we have been known to each other through
Getting older,
our
don't remind me.
middle school
It's
onwards, exactly.
55 years, I think.
55 years, you're
Oh
right.
my God,
So,
yes.
I mean, you know the deal. And I think you and I, we really strike a chord in one way or the other on several of our crossroads. One, like you've been an author of your book, Bold Conscious Leadership. And that is really bringing back the self into the world. Think about yourself first. So thyself first and thou later. So in other words, think about yourself, what you can offer to you, love yourself, and then love others and make it a meaningful life. So my goal through the human element has been the following as well, where all along I've always felt that I think it's easier to write a prescription than not to write a prescription or not to explain the prescription, for instance, as simple a thing like an aspirin or penicillin. And those are some of the human elements that I think we want to sort of have that sort of transmitted or transpired into the physicians of tomorrow. Because time and again, what's happening is we are really galloping away our lives with this fast forwardness and social media and what have you, that there is a chance that the patient and doctor interaction is minimized to merely 60 seconds. And that pains me that I see many a times because most of the
Sure.
doctors are sort of hiding into the CTs and MRIs and PET scans and what have you. I hate to say that, but that's required as well. But then come back and talk to the patient, explain them exactly why a procedure, the next event that may have to be arranged will have to be followed through. What is the need for that prescription or what is not a need for a prescription? Even for a normal test, I think doctors have to spend time and say, like I'll tell you in my life, I never even discussed a normal test over the phone. I would have a patient automatically say he or she went out for, say, a cardiac catheterization and came back. Automatically, there was an appointment made for the follow-up after the test. So the patient would be allowed to ask questions. And plus, it'll give me an opportunity to see the patient and reevaluate one more time, even though the test was normal, how the patient can fare for the further follow-ups. So, I think it's very, very important. And that's where the human element comes in from. Today, you have this third-party interactions, for instance, where the patient and doctor do not have so much time and they have to, and specifically so right now, the patients are confused. And you and I, we are from the old school, so we know how the patients really followed with the physicians for
Mhm.
20 years. In my practice, I had 3 generations of patients I proudly share. And I think I shared that earlier also. They followed with me, which was incredible. And I personally felt really gratified at the end of the day. But today, the managed care is actually dictating and say, look, you
Okay.
cannot go to Dr. XYZ because he or she is not on the panel. And therefore, they're trafficking the patients, they're trafficking the ambulances even to the hospitals of their choices rather than the patient
Yeah,
doctor's needs
totally.
expressed. It is a human element which we want to bring back. And that's precisely why I wrote that book, so that if it's possible, even in today's fast life, the physicians can instill that element within their doctor-patient bond, if you will. I think the connection will be everlasting and will be sort of revived and reinvigorated.
That's beautiful. So, really, you're taking the next step of really going deeper and saying, how can I touch the lives of, people maybe not directly, but indirectly, empowering the physicians and the cardiologists and others to be able to get some precision around people. This is not like an installed pacemaker that you do for heart. This is really about, it's pretty straightforward and simple what you described. So thank you again. If people, as I said, entrepreneurs and others that are probably listening to this, or inventors, other inventors, investors, who knows, right? So where can they reach you? Do you want to tell them, is there one particular place they should find you?
Well,
I'll put it in the show notes, but just so you can, verbalize
well,
it.
they can certainly reach out to me on my email, which is nucardiomd@gmail.com. I'll spell it for them: nucardiomd@gmail.com. I'm sure you're going to put it down later on.
That's right in the link
on the screen. And then we can take the interactions from there on further. I really appreciate that opportunity, that more of the listeners who can actually strike the chord, and the inspiring people who want to come out with more innovations. Maybe perhaps I'll be able to help them out with them and probably seek help from them.
That's right. Exactly. It's a unity consciousness here that we're connecting people with. Whoever the world is, whoever's meant to listen to this is going to listen to this. And is there a social media where they can reach you? Maybe that'd be easier for them rather than write you an email?
Well, actually, they could reach out to me on Facebook if they want to, as my name is Sharad Jaitly. They could certainly write that. They can look me up on LinkedIn and certainly be able to follow me on that as well. I'm as Sharad Jaitly there.
Thank you, man. I always love learning new things from you all the time. There's always so much more to go. And so I don't take it for granted. So I really appreciate it. And thank you for being here today.
Raju, you're an amazing person yourself. You have a hugely enlightened community all around you. You have that aura which really actually percolates beyond to the other ends of the horizons.
Well,
and
this
I
is
think
not about me. This is about you, my friend. This is about you. It's not about me.
Well,
take care.
We know each other so well. I thank you so much again for the opportunity.
Take care, buddy. Thank you so much.
Bye.